Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Belle.
And my name's Tej.
Today we've got a really special guest where we wanted to get the point of view of a parent who has been the recipient of the stem cells. Now, all of this month we have been discussing, the volunteers that have made a massive contribution. We've had previous stories from parents of recipients. And today we've got Gurprit here, who is Gaurav's mum. Hiya, Gurprit. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. So just before we start, can you tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about Guarav, what problem he had?
Okay. Even from the day he was born by emergency section a month early. So he had sort of health issues right from the off. As he was going through his first year and a half, he kept getting infections, chest infections. And we always put it down to he's got a low immune system, weak immune system because he was premature. That's what we always used to think. But he was under a really good consultant who saw the pattern and thought, hold on, there might be something more to this. And so he had his blood work looked at in more detail and then referred us to Children's Hospital, where obviously the more complex cases go. So they referred us to Children's, where he had more blood tests done. And that's where they found out and told us that he had this blood disorder, monosomy 7.
How old was Guarav when the consultant started to suspect that there might be something more to this?
He had just turned 2 in May, but it was actually the month before. It was in April that we had our first appointment at Children's Hospital when they actually took the samples from him. And then it was June when they told us the results. It was in June that we got told that actually it's something quite serious and he's going to need a bone marrow transplant.
How did that initially, the first time you heard that, how did it make you feel? Or did it just feel like it was surreal and it wasn't happening?
The funny thing is, when we went to that appointment to have his bloods done in April, we were in oncology outpatients and we still didn't click that this could be something serious.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there seeing the little children who've obviously lost their hair through chemo, coming back in as outpatients. And I remember saying to Sunny, oh, look, it could be so much worse. At least he's just got a weak immune system. I didn't click that this was going to be us. And so when they actually said to us, bone marrow transplant, obviously we've heard them words before, but I didn't actually know what it meant. I thought it was something to do with bones. But then I knew the problems with his blood. And I don't know how to describe that feeling because it didn't feel real. I thought, why him? Why is this happening to him? And I remember the consultant said, it's just bad luck. It's just unfortunate. But this is where we are. This is,
Was the condition actually something from the start then? Because where you said he went through an emergency C-section, he kept on getting infections. Was it right from the start that he had this problem?
I think it must have been because it's a genetic disorder. So it's from birth. It's in his genes from when he was born. But obviously it just took that time to pick it up, the year and a half, say.
Okay. And what's the name of the blood disorder?
It's monosomy 7. When you have your chromosomes, his number 7 chromosome, there's just one. I think there's supposed to be 2. There was a missing.
The amazing thing is, when I went in for the donation, I thought, it's the stem cells are for people with leukemia, which obviously is a massive thing in itself. But since talking to yourself and other parents, it's such a big, huge pool of people who benefit from getting that stem cell donation.
Definitely, yeah. Because the thing is, we normally were, I didn't know what a bone marrow transplant was until I looked into it. And then, even then, at that point, I thought it was to treat leukemia. And obviously, Guarav didn't have leukemia. But what this blood disorder, it's a precondition of leukemia. And what they told us was that people that have this blood disorder do go on to have a an aggressive form of leukemia that generally doesn't have good prognosis, that even if we try and treat it with chemotherapy, it's not looking good at the end. So they said to us, for us, the best option, the only option, was to have the transplant to prevent the leukemia from developing, instead of how generally people who have leukemia are having it to cure. For us, it was a prevention thing. So actually, when he, during that year, apart from his chest infections, that he would still get them quickly and end up needing to go into hospital and having IV antibiotics because his own blood system wasn't good enough to fight it. He was actually clinically well. He was okay. Do you see? Apart from those, he'd have a chest infection, he'd be ill for a week or so, then he's back to better again. Generally, he was well. So when we took him in for his transplant, he was well.
Your initial appointment that you had with the consultant, where they told you
Yeah.
about the condition,
Yeah.
did they give you enough information about it, or how did you go on from there? Did you go and research it, or did they give you direction?
I think he did try to explain, but honestly, it was all a blur after, when things like life-threatening, leukemia, bone marrow transplant, when these words were thrown, they're kind of the words that stick out to me now. After that, I remember, I don't remember so much of what was said. All I know is he did say that obviously you'll get a follow-up appointment. We'll tell you what the next steps are. But this is what's going to happen. He is going to need to have a bone marrow transplant. And then I think it was a matter of going away and reading up on it ourselves and looking, doing our own research into it a bit before that letter came through telling us the next step. And it was that period of time was hard.
How long was it till you had the next appointment, between the two appointments, roughly?
I'd say it came early August, so a couple of months. And in that time, a lot happened, because I remember literally a day or two after, Sonny signed up to do the London Marathon, because he started Googling and researching bone marrow transplant. Anthony Nolan Register, the website came up. So I know he put it out there on Twitter. My son needs a bone marrow transplant. We need a donor. And I know at the same time he signed up to do the London Marathon.
So it's all systems go for Sonny, then your husband.
Yeah. Straight away on the positive action. I don't know how he did that, because it was different for me.
How was it for you, would you say?
I think I felt like, when they told us he needs a bone marrow transplant, they also said, the success rates are like, not great. I think I focused in on the 20% that don't work. They said 80% chance that it works. In my head, I thought, right, if he's that unlucky to get it, he's going to be that 20. In my mind, I thought he's been given a life sentence. I've got this much time left with him. That's what I thought, because they were saying we need to get this transplant done before the end of the year. So I thought, right, so I've got 6 months left with him. That's what I was thinking. And I couldn't talk about it like Sonny could talk to people about it and have a conversation. I couldn't talk about it without crying, so I couldn't talk to anyone. Apart from my family, where I was having my regular meltdowns with them, but not to anyone else. Like how Sonny was with people, I wasn't like that.
Do you think on that point, because we're all sitting here, we're mothers as well, and just from what you're saying, from that first appointment where obviously they've given you this information, I can only imagine what you were going through. And my heart goes out to you, having to think about the fact that you were going through that. As a mother of a 2-year-old that's going through this, how were you supporting yourself? And obviously you were talking to family, but you couldn't talk to others. Were there any support groups that were out there that you perhaps would have approached?
Not that I knew of, or maybe I wasn't open to that at that time. I don't think I didn't look for support from anywhere apart from my family. And actually, the biggest turnaround in how I felt was because Sonny got me involved and started making me do things, little things like, oh, someone, would you mind responding to that email for me because I haven't got time? Can you do this for me? And then when I thought, gosh, this actually feels good doing something useful about the situation, I did more. And then I kind of met him on the level he was at.
But what a wonderful partnership.
Yeah,
He was,
tell me,
he
but I
was,
didn't.
yeah.
We've never been through anything like this before. We've obviously been married a long time, but never had really had a challenge or anything. We've kind of been sailing through life. Everything's fine, and then this was our first real challenge.
Yeah, almost like a test, isn't it?
It is, I think, and then but I always think thank God for him because he did get me to the same mental space as where he was before the actual transplant happened. But I was there with him, like where he was at, that positive mindset. I got there before the transplant.
Gaurav was 2 years old when you were finding out about the diagnosis and going
Yeah.
through the process. Was he in nursery? Was he going to play groups at that
No,
point?
he was no, nothing like that. In fact, um, around the same time, I'd kind of had some concerns about his development, and somebody had mentioned the idea of autism to me because of the way he is, and in my own mind, I did my research and thought, right, I think that's a track we're going to be going down as well, but one thing at a time. Let's get this transplant done first, and then we'll focus on the development issues after. And that is something that we are dealing with now as well, because he does have autism. But so development wise, he was healthy, like apart from these, I mean, clinically healthy, like he was doing normal things like playing, but development wise, he was delayed because he wasn't speaking and he wasn't eating solid food. He still was eating pureed food, which by 2, it's not, you're delayed if you're not, So I made that, we made that connection and thought, okay, we'll come back to that after the transplant. Right now, it's irrelevant.
What's really interesting is the previous interview that we did with another parent going through a similar situation said exactly the same thing in the fact that after they'd got the diagnosis, the child was fine. Clinically, you wouldn't see from the outside that there was
Yeah.
something. And from my point of view, I'd be like, that's amazing, because what was in my head was they'd be ill the whole time and they just wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to.
Until that transplant was done, you'd think they were going to be all bedridden, basically,
Yeah.
until and that wasn't the case, which I think is what made it harder when we actually had to go into hospital to have the transplant, because I know he's fine and well, running around, doing his usual antics, and then I'm going to go in there, pump him full of chemo, make him ill, and it's a choice we're making.
Do you think that was harder to almost accept the diagnosis because he seemed fine?
We just trusted them. We have no choice but to trust the experts, do we? But it was hard to imagine, because that's exactly what I used to think when I looked at him, and I could I did stop doing this eventually, but I'd just look at him and cry and then I think he doesn't want to see me crying at him. What, he doesn't understand, why is she crying at me all the time?
Yeah.
But that's what was happening. It was hard. But by the time we actually got to the point, because we went in hospital lots of times for lots of blood tests, lots of little, things leading up to it. And during those times, I realised, while we are there, I cannot cry in front of him, because I'm just going to have to, because he's going to look to me for reassurance and to feel safe and secure. And that, messy face is not going to be reassuring.
And in regards to the fact that obviously, from what you said earlier, you were in a state where, I don't know if it's shock or you weren't able to talk about it at the very least. And the fact that you had to see it from Gaurav's point of view, where you couldn't cry in front of him. And
Yeah.
do you think that helped in the fact that you couldn't cry and you could in front of him, make you a
Yeah.
bit stronger? Or how would you take it? Because
I think it was at one of the pre-appointments before the transplant that we went there, and they were going to do a blood test on him, and they couldn't find a vein, and so they tried a few different places, and he was screaming, and it was so upsetting because they couldn't find a vein. They tried his hands, they tried his arms, then they went to his feet, and it was horrible. But then I cried, and he looked at my face, and it made him worse. He started crying, and I thought, right, I'm never going to do that again. I'm just
Oh,
Yeah.
So during that time we were in hospital, he never saw me cry. I'd because what happened was we were there for 3 months, and during that time, me and Sonny would switch out one night of the week so I could come home because obviously my daughter was home. But thank God for my amazing family, Sonny's family. She would stay with them. She'd be with Sonny's parents a lot, and they'd do the school run. They kept everything normal for her basically. But I'd go home that one night of the week, and I'd that car journey was my time to just let it out, and then I'd go back and I'm fine again. I'm good to go.
it's the amount that you have to deal with as a parent, isn't it? It's,
Yeah,
you know,
it's crazy.
it's not an easy process to go through. So just going in regards to the journey. So in August, you've obviously found out about the disorder.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
so we found out in June. August, we've been told like this is where we're at now. Come in, because obviously that consultant, he then put us to the transplant specialist at that
Mm-hmm.
point. And so this was our first appointment with her, where she went into more detail. Right, so we're going to look for a match now. We can test you both, but parents generally are a half match. We can test his sister. There's a 1 in 4 chance she might be a match for him, but she wasn't. And then they tested our siblings, like mine and Sonny's, to see if there was any closeness or anything, which there was nothing. So there was nothing in the family. Then we knew, right, so now we're relying on the bone marrow register to find a match. And then they hit us with that, right, so Asians, there's not that many on there. So, your chances of finding a match are like really low compared to, say, somebody from a white background.
How does that make you feel, having been the person that had to listen to that?
Well, to be honest with you, it was hard because it made me think, right, this is never going to happen, is it? Again, I was in that zone of, right, well, I knew this was coming, didn't I? They've already told me I've got 6 months. I was quite, not fancying my chances, basically thinking that, okay, we've got very slim chance of finding a match. Let's see what happens. But at the same time, my understanding of it was that, hold on, I'm an Asian, I'm not on the register. I didn't know anything about this register. Why didn't I know about this sooner? Why wasn't I on it? Why am I not on it, basically? And that's what it took for me to learn about the bone marrow register, was for my son to need a donor.
That's a really good point, the way you've put it. Why aren't I on it? To be
But I
honest,
didn't
I
know
think,
about it. But
yeah,
you know something
exactly.
though? And
Yeah.
then when we did
Mhm.
join, me and Sunny, because what they told us was that don't join immediately, because if you're called immediately, you're in the middle of Guarav's transplant at the moment. Can you afford to go for 2-3 days to London and do your donation? No, don't go on there yet until he's out of hospital. So
Yeah.
as soon as Guarav was out, we went and joined the register. So we're free to go and donate if we're called to. And we did it when we went to donate blood and join the bone marrow register at the same time. And the leaflets were like hidden behind all these. They weren't there, right? And I thought, this is why people don't know, isn't it? Because look at these leaflets, they're just shoved at the back of the pile. And that was
Yeah.
that was at a venue that we're doing blood donations, which makes the most sense to have it up front and out there.
So what you're saying is the lack of awareness is what's
Yeah,
stopping so many
yes,
people from doing it.
definitely, absolutely. I think because if I'd known about it before, I'd like to think I'd have joined. But it's one of those things where I think with a lot of things, until it affects you, unless you see it, you're not. It's the sort of thing that you can't. Your attention's not everywhere. People tend to empathize and donate and participate in events that support and think causes that mean something to them.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
and I think maybe we our community. I mean, I felt a massive. So the people listened when it was Guarav, and so many people joined the register, and that kind of support was unbelievable. It was.
Can I just say, in regards to that, and we're going to go through what you did to raise the awareness, but prior to me joining the register, I had heard about Gaurav. It was something I can't remember where, but as soon as I'd heard the name that we were planning a podcast with you, I was like, I remember that campaign, and I don't tend to remember very much. I mean, if you listen to any of our podcasts, I don't remember anything. So whatever you did during that campaign, it worked.
Yeah.
It stuck in my mind.
So how did the campaign?
Shall I tell you how did it happen?
Yeah,
it was that one. It was that tweet that Sonny put out there a couple of days after we found out we needed a bone marrow transplant. He just tweeted, "Right, my son needs a bone marrow transplant," and then it just spiraled like from there because people listened, people cared. If it wasn't for people, our community, no, it wouldn't have gotten as big. Or if there wasn't so much support from our community, people, it wouldn't have got as big as it did. People listened. I don't know how else to put it.
So it's interesting because it's not the fact that people don't want to help; it's the fact that they just don't know about it. Is what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So what happened after that tweet? What was the next point? Did you do more campaigning or?
Well, from the tweet, and then people reached out to Sunny, people, just regular people from the community, and they were like, "Oh, why don't you speak to Jas Gormal Foundation, who are a charity that they had a loss in their family after Jas Gormal passed away, and they set up the foundation in her memory, and their aim is to get more Asians onto the bone marrow register, and then so somebody put Sunny in touch with them, and they took it on and again spiraled further because they already had a voice and a following. Come on, this boy needs us now. Let's get on that register. And then they were sort of taught Sunny the way with the setting up events, register events, like come along here, we'll set one up here, we'll do one there, and then that was it. It was registering at putting these events together and just going along and getting people to register, trying to encourage people, raise that awareness, let people know that this is a problem out there. There's not enough of us on the register.
The Jas Gormal charity, so from their loss, they were supporting others, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That they were guiding and almost using their experience to help you.
It just took us under their wing and literally managed everything, made everything. Because while I was still home doing hands-on care with Guarav, then Sonny was able to go out and about and attend the events, and they helped him every step of the way. They were there.
How did it feel in the fact that not only are you having to look after your children through this whole thing, but also you were having to raise that awareness, obviously for the same thing, to make sure that you got the transplant. But how did that make you feel? Was it a positive or a negative that you had to go out to these events?
It was, honestly, it was great seeing all the support and everything. But obviously at the time when you're looking after your kids and you're actually going through it, it's an extra stress of thinking, I need to find a match. I need, imagine if there was, at that appointment we've gone to in August and they've already got his blood work. They know what his genetic makeup is, that what's going to be a match for him. Imagine if they just ran that through the bone marrow register and like, yeah, okay, you're going to need a donation and there's a match there for you. Imagine if there's a match already waiting and you don't have to go through that painful wait. And it was painful. It was hard. But you do it because you thought to yourself, we need it and other people need it, because obviously along the way we've met so many families in the same situation. And families that didn't have the same outcome as us that we had, that we've still got a healthy boy. People, I met parents in that. I lived with them for 3 months where they went home without their child. It's
wow.
And because they didn't have a full match, because they had a half match, or they've used a parent, or and having a full match gives you the best chance of having a successful transplant. And obviously, the more of us on that register, the better the chance of people not having to spend time looking. They can just, you're there, you're ready, aren't you?
So how many months were you campaigning then until you found your match?
Was between June to September.
Oh, so it was quite quick then, relatively. Obviously, it probably didn't feel like that.
No, it didn't feel like that, but it was, because remember, we had the timeline. It has to be done before the end of the year. we had that time frame, and they'd said to us that if you don't find a match before then, we will have to just use Sonny. And yes, he's a half match. It's not like the chance of being successful is not as high as if he had an actual match. But by the end of this year, one way or another, he has to have that transplant.
So they would have gone to yourselves even though it wasn't a full match. I hadn't
Yeah,
realised that was the case.
and it would be Sonny. And because this is a thing, I've met a family in there where they did that, where they used the dads, and even though it was only a half match, because that's still a better chance than having no transplant in those circumstances. And that was the case for us too. It was a matter of, it needs to be done. And
One way or the other, that needs to happen.
yeah.
What is the success rate of if you want a full match then?
Oh, do you know, I don't know I can't tell you the exact numbers. I'm not sure. But all I know is that if it's a full match, you've obviously got a better chance. And if it's a half match, it's half of that. The boy I knew that had his dad's, he didn't make it. There's been so many like things that I've seen during our time there that's made me think how lucky we are. I know, even though we had to go through all that, we are so fortunate.
And seeing, like, having all these families around you and the stories of people, like the children that are lost, how did that make you feel? That must have been extra stress because you're thinking, okay, this can be the outcome, that can be the outcome.
Yeah. At all times. Obviously, when we've gone in there knowing we've got a match and it's a full match, you're feeling positive. Not just that, I know we had so many people praying for him. I know there was a massive wide community out there. Everybody was rooting for him, and it made me feel positive. It made me think this is going to be fine. And I prayed a lot.
That sounds, do you know what, that makes me feel so much better, the fact that it did help you in just that little bit, whether people are joining the register or they decide not to, but having that support has obviously helped.
It made a massive difference. Yeah. So in those months in between, finding out his diagnosis to having the transplant, that the support that we had from the community definitely lifted us both. It took us through it, carried us through it. Even during the time we were in hospital, we had so many messages. New people were praying for him, and it meant everything.
And about your daughter, how was she coping through this? Because obviously she's still at home, going to school, living her life.
Well, she was only 4 at the time.
Yeah.
So even when she used to, there was a lot of time when we were isolating when we were in hospital, so she couldn't come in the room, but she could only come to the door. And thank God for Sunny's family, because her daily routine just ticked on like normal, like nothing changed. And when she'd come to the hospital, it would be like a fun day out. She'd go to the playroom and just play with their toys instead of hers at home. It was, thankfully, she was quite oblivious to how serious things were.
I think a lot of the times we complain in the South Asian community how we have too much family, we've got them around. But this is when you realise how important family is.
Yeah.
The fact that you said that
God.
they were,
yeah, because we could never have done it without them. And I said this to Sunny. I thought, Sunny, there's moms in here that I'm living with these 3 months, and they're single parents, and they've got other children that they're having to, they're worrying about where they're staying this week, what they're doing. Single is so hard. And I said, we're still so lucky. Like, we've got each other, and we've got your families here. Do you know what I mean? And then it was like, when it comes to holidays, Christmas holidays, she'd go to my parents. They live an hour out. So she was shared around like nicely, and they passed the time for us so lovely, basically. I just knew that I didn't worry about her. I didn't have to worry about her, because I knew she's fine.
As grandparents, you know that they'll look after her, and that pressure is off your mind because you know that they'll love her.
Yeah.
They're her blood at the end of the day. They'll do whatever they need to. So then you could concentrate on what you needed to.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went.
So this is a big shout out to your family then, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. I'm sure maybe I've said it, maybe I haven't, but honestly, they've got to know it. But even since then, come on, it's not like during that time in hospital, but even since then, we're around each other. We need each other. I need them.
There we
Still.
are. So next time anyone has a family feud, just pull up this podcast.
Yeah,
The other thing I was
exactly.
going to say, Gurpreet, so obviously you got the call saying you've got a match. How did
Yeah.
that feel? That in that moment that you got that phone call?
It felt unbelievable. Like I didn't think, like honestly, because part of me kept thinking we're not going to get it. It's going to end up being Sunny. Like I was always drawn to like try to mentally prepare for the worst case scenario. So when it happened, it was like, oh God, this is amazing, right? But at the same time, the next stage was closer now, wasn't it? Like I got my match. Yes, this is great. This is what we needed.
Yeah.
Oh damn! Now he's going to have to actually go through that chemo bit now.
Yeah.
It was just horrible. It was bittersweet. Like I loved it. I was so everything. I'm so thankful to God that we got that match because we wouldn't be where we are today without it. But in that moment, it was overwhelming because I was so happy that we've got a match, and then immediately scared for the next stage. Now, like, oh God, let's get ready for the next bit now.
And how long was it before you did the next stage?
So between September, we spent a lot of time in October back and forthing, going like getting ready for it. And I think even during that time, he might have had an infection or two as well. So where he's had to go in and stay in for 24, 48 hours and have IV antibiotics because his blood was still bad. And then December we went in for the transplant. We were in over Christmas, like the week before Christmas, and that was it. We was in there for 3 months then to the end of Feb.
Okay. And what year was that? Can I ask?
That was December 2013. So it was 8 years in last Christmas.
How was the process of the actual transplant? So obviously you've got the fear of it. We've got to the day of the transplant.
Yeah. Well, the day of the transplant was probably relief, like on that day, because I knew this is it. Because just the week before, he had intensive chemotherapy, so he'd gone in okay, and then the chemo started, and that obviously made him very sick very quickly as well. So that was a tough week.
What did you go through in that week then, in regards to the chemo?
Like I said, it was intense, so it was very strong, and it went from him looking normal to completely changed. He just changed in that week. He was like bedridden then. He was ill, like he was sick. And it all happened really quickly in the sense that his hair started falling out, and then he had temperatures. He was not well. He was poorly. He was bedridden. And then the day of the transplant, it's not an immediate, like, so they wiped out all his blood cells because they were not functioning. They've put in the new blood cells that are now we just need them to take to the body. We need his body to accept these new cells. And then it took like a week or two, I'd say a week, until he had the first sign of, yeah, he's starting to get neutrophils again now. Like he's got 0.01 neutrophil. And the moms would share it with each other, like, oh my God, he's got a neutrophil, like 0.01 neutrophil. And that's the start, because then they start climbing, getting back to the normal level. But even in that time, even so, he had the transplant on the 18th, and even in that, he wasn't well straight away. So he was still in there for a couple of months after, because he had quite a few complications after as well. So he was unwell for most of the time in there, and he changed, his appearance changed, his size changed, because he was on so many different drugs afterwards, like steroids and things, and then obviously he stopped eating as well, and then he's had the tube. He shaved his head because it was just falling down his face, because it was falling out all the time, and because he was just lying in bed, he wasn't active at all.
And were you staying with him during this time,
Yeah.
the whole time, or yeah?
My one night off when me and Sonny, but Sonny came every day, but he'd stay the night one night a week.
And can I just say, I mean, again, going back to, I can't imagine what you went through as a mother having to see this.
Yeah, it was hard, I'm telling you. And sometimes the thing that one thing they made us do every day, regardless of how ill that child is, we had to give him a bath. Like we had to get them out of the room so the nurse could come in and clean it all. And in that time, he'd have all his everything tubes attached to him and everything, and would wheel him into the bath with a nurse, and I'd put him in the bath, and that's when the full, like, I have to say, horror of what's happened to my boy would hit me, because I'd see the change, and then I'd think, okay, this is all temporary, this is nothing, and don't let it show on your face what you're thinking and feeling, like, because he's looking at me, can't let it show what I'm thinking.
Was
Just,
the bath like so they could clean the room and just keep them
yeah,
hygienic because they needed to keep
yeah,
everything
everything's got to
hygienic?
be, yeah, because everything was
Okay.
had to be clean, because with at that point where he's got between him, all his white cells are gone, his blood's gone, and the new cells are taking, he's got no protection, so it has to be proper high level of isolation, hygiene, that,
Mm.
which is why you're only allowed two people in there. So it was only me and Sunny, like no family could come in that room. Kieran couldn't, my daughter couldn't come in that room. It was just us two. That's it.
Was Sunny then, because obviously you all had to be isolated,
Mm.
and he just going back home and then having not
No,
going out?
he had to still work. But he, thank God, it's they're all family business and that. It was, he could take time out whenever he needed to, but
Okay.
he was still mixing. It wasn't like how, you know how like now with COVID, it's been a bit
Yeah,
different.
that's what
That
I was
kind of,
thinking.
yeah. But we
Yeah,
were quite. But we've kind of been in that clean zone since then. Our first experience with it,
yeah.
but it wasn't the same. It wasn't like that. Like, oh, you know, wear masks or anything like that. But it was just a matter of only two of you allowed in. Can't be ill, and you've got to wash your hands properly and be clean.
Okay.
And obviously, if you're not feeling well, don't go in there, because if you pass it on anything to him,
Yeah.
he can't get sick right now. Well, he's got no protection.
Wow. I mean, I think, yeah, that's wow. I'm speechless as to what you went
Yeah,
through. It's again going from how simple it is from a donation point of view,
yeah.
um, to what you have to go through. The whole process
It
is
was difficult. It's a I don't know how to describe it. It's a challenge, but I'll never. We've been so lucky. That's all I'm saying, is that we've everything went the way we needed it to for us.
how long were you in hospital with Gaurav for then? Because obviously you said that he had complications.
Yeah, because after the transplant, when we started to see him slightly smile again, um, then something happened. He got an infection. Something, it's got a really long name and I can't remember it, basically, but it was something to do with his lymph nodes all swelled up, literally all in his whole body, and he had to have um he couldn't, his eyes just shut, he ballooned, basically his whole body just ballooned, and it was an infection, something, it's the Epstein-Barr virus that
Mhm.
most of us carry, most of us have it active or inactive, whatever, but whatever it was something that the donor had positive and he had negative,
Mm.
so it interacted, and it made him, he had this reaction on him. It's an unusual reaction, and what they said to us was these kind of things generally happen on solid organ donations, not bone marrow. So it was an unexpected, like you wouldn't expect it to happen on a stem cell donation.
That's
Um,
really interesting, actually. I mean, just by chance today, I
yeah,
came across the letter in regards to my medical records, and like you said, the EBV virus,
yeah,
I, I was positive for that. I was just looking through my results.
yeah,
So obviously, if even as a donor, even if you are positive for certain things, the
yeah.
main focus is look, get that
Get
donation
that blood
in.
in, because these things can be treated, you see, like
Right.
this. There was a treatment for it. Yes, he had to go into intensive care and be under that care for a few days while he had that treatment, which
Mm.
was just another blow, thinking, because you know what it is when we are not, to me, intensive care was, oh gosh, this is it now. Like, do you see what I mean? There was so many ups and, but then when they gave him the treatment and I saw it, everything slowly getting back to normal, and I thought, oh God, thank God. And then that was literally it. Then it took about 3 weeks after that, and then we were able to go home. And then even that was like, you know how I described the moment we found our match. It was one of those where amazing, so happy. But then again, oh no, now I'm on my own. Well, a
Mm.
minute ago, I had these doctors and nurses outside the door to help me look after him, and now I'm on my own. Because when we brought him home, we still kept the isolation up. We didn't let anybody in. for a couple of months, 2, 3 months after that as well. So it was just us three, me, Sonny, and Kieran at home with him.
Is that what is recommended from the
Yes,
hospital then?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do recommend it. Keep your gatherings limited until you get back to some sort of level of decent immunity.
And how did you, so obviously initially is that, oh my God, we are by ourselves having
Yeah,
to do this.
yeah, it was scary.
How long did it take before you started to become a bit more comfortable with the fact that you could do this?
How long did it? I don't know. I also remember a little bit of what I remember is Kieran trying to, my daughter, um, being a bit of a brat, actually trying to get attention for because she, I think at that point when she was with me and I'm giving all my attention to him, that's when that was another challenge.
Mm.
And then, then my mum would say, it's okay, like send her back to Sonny's parents, like take, then she's good there. And I'm like, no, this is how it started, because she's not been with me, has she, for 3, 4 months. I needed to see this is how it is now. Like I need to learn to manage them both. It wasn't easy. It was quite difficult.
And these are the part of the journeys that we don't hear about, of the fact that look, we've got kids, and the other child is
relevant.
impacted by and is impacted, and then what happens afterwards? The transplant's done. How is normal family life now?
Yeah, because he didn't, when he came out, he was still being tube fed. I mean, he still is now, because he never. That's more related to his autism than it is anything to do with the transplant. That he's averse to food, all food. But at that time, he was having tube feed, like most of the children that have had chemo and go off their food have. And when he was home, he'd have the tube in, and sometimes when he's sick, it would come out, and I'd have to call a nurse, community nurse, to come and put another one back in for me. And I remember he was crying and his tube came out, and Kieran, the house of her Cinderella house, the roof, sorry, came off. And I remember her saying to me, Mom, come and fix my roof. And I said, Kieran, I've just got to sort him out. She's like, what's more important, my roof or him?
God,
and I was like,
yeah.
oh my God, okay.
How do we answer that?
Yeah, exactly.
If you had to be a parent, the normal parent things that you had to do, and then you had to see Gaurav as well do his. So it's almost like 2 challenges
at the same time.
go, isn't it?
Yeah,
wow.
It was. But then, I mean, what she's 4, that's how they are. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, then obviously, as she got older, she's amazing with him now, obviously. But and even it didn't take that. I think a couple of years after that, that's when things. I think she started to get a bit more understanding of his needs. That was more of the autism side of things, though, not the because from the transplant side of things, everything's gone like to the textbook. Thank God, because he's well, and we came out. We'd go back in very regular for appointments after to check, to keep an eye on things, do these blood tests. Like first they were monthly. I mean, there were a few stays as well after. Like he'd get an infection and we'd have to go and stay in for a bit, or anytime he got a temperature, we'd have to take him in. Basically, he's just got stronger and stronger as the years went by, and then even so, just generally all the reoccurring infections stopped. You know those things that were going wrong before.
Yeah.
Then we saw the benefit of the transplant, if you know what I mean, after a couple of years.
Did you ever find out anything about the donor? And did you get any information? Yeah. What kind of things did you find out about the donor?
At the time, what they told us was he's a male, he's 45, he's from Germany.
Oh, okay. So they gave you the location as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And after the transplant, when we come home and got our breath back, then I asked Anthony Nolan to give me, they couldn't give me the details because it's anonymous for 2 years.
Yep.
But I sent them a thank you card. I sent a card and we got a reply. And then I'd send another card and then we got another reply. And after, when it was 2 years was up just before the 2 years, when I sent a letter, I said, I'm going to ask them for your details, if that's okay.
Why 2 years? Why do they?
I think it's something to do with if you need it again, if you need a top up, or you need some more. So there's no sort of obligation emotionally, like, so that you can still keep your distance, still have the freedom to say no if you want to. For the donor's perspective, I mean, to have that independence, to have that choice.
That's what I was told in regards to that as well.
But because
Yeah.
As a donor, your circumstances could change, and there might be reasons why you can't. And then that's it really. I think for that protection for both sides.
Just from the donor's point of view, I think right from the start of the process, one thing I am looking forward to, touch wood, it happens, is that communication. So, because
it is incredible. Trust me. Like now, we have a family WhatsApp group that we talk on. They've been
oh
stayed at
wow,
our. Yeah, because we've been in proper touch. Like after we exchanged details, and then we went and visited. We went and stayed in Germany for a weekend. We went for a long weekend
Wow, oh
first.
my
That's when we got to
God.
know them, and exchange stories how it was from there. And thank God they speak good English because we obviously don't speak German. Yeah,
we'd like to learn
and
German at the very
I
least after
know. I did think, why did I
that.
choose French at school? I should have
Oh
chose
God, it makes you
German.
think that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've been there, they've been to ours, and they've stayed a couple of times. In fact, last time was just before lockdown happened in 2020 when our donor came with his son and stayed for a
Oh,
week.
do you know what?
Yeah.
That is a lovely part
Because
to.
they've got something in common, haven't they? They love their Liverpool supporters, Sonny and our
Oh
donor.
God, don't start me on Liverpool. My husband's a
They're
Liverpool
mad
supporter.
fans, yeah. And so they come over, they book go and watch all the matches together, and yeah,
Wow,
and that's it. So
That's
we've got a real
amazing.
relationship, and he's got Gaurav's name tattooed down. He's got his own son, and then he's got Gaurav's name tattooed underneath it.
Oh my God, that's so
Proper
beautiful.
really like family. I don't know how else to put it. Just we like one now, and it's one of those things you can't. It's never gonna change because it's because of Gaurav. We're one.
Mm.
and this is I think the emotional part from a donor's point of view of that is the part you're looking for. Of yes, you're
Yeah.
going through this and you don't know who you're giving it to, you don't know what the outcome is, and
No.
you hope that it happens. But you do want to get that communication. From my point of view, that's what I'm sort of waiting for. Is I actually really do want to. There's a bit of
See
a
how they're
personal,
doing.
yeah, a bit of a
Yeah.
personal vested interest now because of
Yeah.
that, despite not
Yeah.
knowing it, which is interesting. What message would you like to give other South Asians out there who are perhaps not aware of the importance of it, but just from your point of view, having gone through what you've been through, give us your main message to the other South Asians that aren't on the register yet.
I would say, obviously, I'm not a donor, so I'm not sure. But from what my donors told me, and from what I've heard from other people who've done donations, it's not a big ask in terms of from their perspective, from donating. It's not really, it's a few hours. It's a bit of your time. It's a few of your stem cells. Stem cells regenerate. It's not like you're giving a kidney or anything. Your stem cells regenerate. You're not going to actually lose anything from giving your stem cells. For a recipient, from my perspective, my family's complete still. If I didn't have a donor, where would I don't even want to think about what my circumstances would be if I didn't get that match and donation. If somebody wasn't selfless and just done that for a stranger, like we were strangers to him, all he knew was it was a 2-year-old from England. That's what the information he went on and did what he did for us. I would just say it might seem like, nothing to you. As a donor, it might be, oh, it was easy, it was few. But for us, it's everything because this is given us the last 8 years and the future. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Gurpreet, and sharing your experience from the start to the finish with us. And we really do wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk. God, I told you I rambled before we started recording.
No, it's been fab.
Amazing.
Thank you. So that's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.